And Elvis Presley had one child, and her name was Lisa Marie. She was born on February 1st, 1968. That is the official story. The only story the Elvis Presley estate will ever tell you. And for millions of people, that's where it ends. But what if it doesn't? Elvis was the most famous man in the world. He was a fantasy for millions of women. He lived a life that was isolated and strange, surrounded by people who depended on him for everything. Could a secret have been kept? Could a child have been born in the shadows, far away from the flashbulbs of Graceland? It's not just one person asking. It's dozens. Over the years, many people have come forward. They claim to be the secret sons and daughters of the king of rock and roll. Are they all lying? Is it about money? Or is it about something deeper, a need to connect to a myth? The estate says they are all frauds. Science, in the form of DNA tests, has often agreed. But the stories persist. They are tangled webs of old photographs, whispered deathbed confessions, and legal battles that stretch for years. Each claim is a ghost story, a story of what might have been, or a story that asks us to question the history we think we know. Why do these claims refuse to die? And what if, against all odds, just one of them was true? Number 16. Why does the myth demand more children? Before we look at any single person, we have to ask a bigger question. Why do these stories exist at all? It's not just about Elvis. Famous people have always attracted these kinds of claims. But the Elvis phenomenon is different. It's on another level. Part of the reason is Elvis himself. He created a myth. He was a boy from Tupelo, Mississippi, who became a king. He was a symbol of rebellion who loved his mother. He was a sex symbol who sang gospel music. He was full of contradictions, and myths need to be bigger than real life. A man that big, that loved by that many, must have left more behind. That's the feeling. One daughter, born inside a formal marriage, seems too simple, too normal. The legend of Elvis feels wilder than that. So people's imaginations fill in the gaps. They imagine secret affairs, passionate nights on movie sets, or with fans plucked from a crowd. They imagine a child hidden away to protect them from the crushing weight of fame. The story is more romantic that way. It fits the legend better. The money is a huge factor. We can't ignore that. Elvis Presley Enterprises, the company that manages his estate, is a billion-dollar business. To be recognized as Elvis's child would mean a share of that fortune. That's a powerful motivator. It can make people believe things that aren't true. It can make them lie. But for some, it seems to be less about the money and more about identity. They feel a connection. They see his face when they look in the mirror. They believe they have his talent. They feel like they don't belong in their own lives, and this story explains why. It gives them a place in the world. It makes them special. This all started almost as soon as he died on August 16th, 1977. His death created a vacuum. The king was gone, but the kingdom remained. People weren't ready to let him go. The Elvis is alive sightings started, and so did the claims of secret children. It was a way of keeping him alive. A part of him was still here. It's a powerful idea. And it's an idea that has fueled a cottage industry of books, lawsuits, and talk show appearances for over 40 years. The myth almost requires it. So what if the search for a secret child isn't about finding a person at all? What if it's about trying to understand the man in the myth he left behind? Could the claims be a reflection of our own desire for the fairy tale to be more complicated? And is it possible that a world that could create a star as big as Elvis could also be a world that could hide his biggest secret? Number 15, what happened to the men who called themselves Jr.? The name is simple, Elvis Presley Jr. It carries so much weight, it sounds official. And over the years, several different men have used it. They have claimed to be the one, the secret son, the heir to the throne. Their stories are all different, but they all share a common goal to be recognized as the son of the king. One of the most persistent was a man named Elvis Aaron Presley Jr. He legally changed his name to this. He was a performer himself. He sang his father's songs. He tried to look like him. His story was that he was the result of an affair between Elvis and a woman from the film, Blue Hawaii. He claimed he was adopted and only learned of his true identity later in life. He even wrote a book about it. He claimed to have DNA evidence, but it was never presented in a way that satisfied the courts or the public. He toured for years, playing on the name, offering a shadow of the real thing to audiences who missed the king. Another man who went by the name John Smith had a different tale. His was part of a book by Lucy D. Barbin, which we'll get to later. He claimed to be the son of Elvis from a long-running secret relationship, but he stayed out of the spotlight. He was a name in a book, a ghost. This made his story more compelling for some. He wasn't seeking fame, he just wanted the truth to be known. And there were others. So many others. They would pop up in tabloids. They would have a grainy photo where they looked a bit like Elvis in the right light. They would have a story about a mother who had a secret. The internet made it easier for these claims to spread. A forum post here, a self-published book there. The stories often shared similar elements. A mother sworn to secrecy, a discovery of old letters, or a deathbed confession. A feeling of being different their whole lives. The Elvis Presley estate has a standard response. They deny all of them. They have lawyers who are very good at shutting these claims down. They point to the lack of credible evidence. They point to Elvis's will, which only names his father, his grandmother, and Lisa Marie. Legally, the case is closed, but emotionally, for the claimants and their followers, it never is. They see a conspiracy. They believe the estate is hiding something to protect the money. Why did so many men, in particular, gravitate towards this specific claim? Was it just about the name and the potential fame that came with it? If you claim to be Elvis's son, you are not just a child of a celebrity, you are the son of a king. It's a claim to a kind of American royalty, and did Elvis ever worry about a son being born out of wedlock, or was his public image too carefully controlled for such a thing to ever be possible? What happened to all these men, and why have their stories all faded while the legend of a secret child has not? Number 14 was there a secret son in Germany. Elvis was in the army from 1958 to 1960. He was stationed in Friedberg, Germany. He was 23 years old. He was already the biggest star in the world. But for 2 years, he was also a sergeant. It was a strange time. He was away from his home, his music, and his usual circle of friends. He was also grieving the recent death of his mother, Gladys. It was during this time in Germany that he met a 14-year-old girl named Priscilla Beaulieu. She would later become his wife. But was she the only one who caught his eye? He was a young, famous, and handsome soldier. He went to parties, he dated. The tabloids at the time were full of stories about his European romances. This period of his life is a fertile ground for what-if scenarios. It's far away from Memphis, records are harder to find, memories are faded. It is the perfect setting for a secret to be born. One of the most persistent rumors is that Elvis fathered a child with a young German woman. Some versions of the story name a woman named Margit Birgen. Articles have appeared in German magazines over the years claiming a son was born. The story usually involves a brief, intense affair. Elvis is then shipped back to the United States, perhaps never even knowing the woman was pregnant. The child is raised in Germany, maybe not even knowing who his real father is until much later in life. This story is compelling because it seems plausible. It doesn't require a massive conspiracy at Graceland. It's a simple story of a soldier and a local girl. It happened all the time, but proving it is nearly impossible. There are no official records. The people involved are either gone or silent. The evidence is usually just a story passed down through a family. Sometimes there is a photograph of a young man who looks a little like Elvis. The book The Elvis Conspiracy from 1987 touches on these rumors. It suggests that Elvis's manager, Colonel Tom Parker, would have been terrified of such a scandal. A secret baby, especially with a German girl so soon after World War II, could have damaged Elvis's clean-cut image. The Colonel's entire business model was based on controlling that image. If such a child existed, the theory goes, the Colonel would have done everything in his power to make the story go away. The payoffs, threats, legal agreements, all of it would have been on the table. This theory paints the Colonel as the gatekeeper of Elvis's secrets. It makes the lack of evidence a kind of evidence in itself. The secret was kept too well, but it's still just a theory. There has never been a German man who has come forward with a claim strong enough to gain major international traction. The story remains a whisper, a footnote in the Elvis legend. But could the Colonel's control have been that absolute? Could he really have hidden a child for all these years, even after his and Elvis's deaths? If a son was born in Germany, would he even care about the fame and fortune, or would he have just lived his life, carrying the secret with him? And is it possible that somewhere in Germany today, there are grandchildren of Elvis Presley who have no idea? Number 13, who is Tim Farrell. Not all the claims come with books and television interviews. Some are quieter. They exist on the fringes of the Elvis world, known mostly to dedicated fans and researchers. The story of Tim Farrell is one of these. It's a strange and tangled case that involves another major celebrity from that era, the actor James Dean. The claim comes from a man named John H. Hembry. He wrote a book laying out his theory. According to him, a son of Elvis was born in 1956. The mother was a young actress who had been involved with James Dean. Dean died in a car crash on September 30th, 1955. The story goes that this actress then had a brief relationship with Elvis. The result was a son named Tim. This story is different because it connects two of the biggest cultural icons of the 20th century. Elvis and James Dean represented two sides of the same rebellious coin. The idea that they were connected by a woman and a secret child is the stuff of Hollywood legend. The theory suggests the child, Tim Farrell, was adopted and raised without knowing his true parentage. The evidence for this is thin. It relies on interpreting old photographs, connecting timelines, and a lot of speculation. There are no first-hand accounts from the mother or the alleged son. It's a theory pieced together from a distance, decades after the events were supposed to have taken place. It has not been pursued in court in any significant way. It's not a claim that the Elvis Presley estate has ever had to publicly address. But it raises interesting questions about Elvis's early life. In 1956, Elvis was exploding. Heartbreak Hotel was released in January of that year. He was on television. He was making movies. He was becoming a phenomenon. His life was a whirlwind. Could a secret relationship and a child have been lost in that chaos? His manager, Colonel Tom Parker, was just beginning to exert his total control over Elvis's life and image. A scandal like this would have been his worst nightmare. This story, whether true or not, points to how little we really know about the private lives of public figures. We see the image they project. We see the carefully managed press releases. But we don't see what happens behind closed doors. The Tim Farrell story is a reminder that in the space between the public record and private reality, anything can seem possible. If a child was born in that chaotic first year of fame, would anyone have even known how to handle it? Was the machinery of celebrity protection in place yet to hide such a secret? And is it possible that a secret this big, connecting two legends, was simply too explosive to ever be allowed to come to light? Number 12, The Curious Case of John Smith. This is not a story about a man who sought the spotlight. It's the opposite. This is a story that exists almost entirely within the pages of a controversial book. The book was called Are You Lonesome Tonight? And it was published in 1987. It was written by a woman named Lucy DeBarbin. She claimed to have had a secret 24-year affair with Elvis Presley. And she claimed they had a daughter, Desiree, but the book also mentioned a son. A man referred to only by the pseudonym John Smith. According to DeBarbin, John Smith was Elvis's firstborn, the son of another secret relationship Elvis had before he became famous. DeBarbin claimed that Elvis told her about this son. He was a secret that haunted him. He wanted to acknowledge the boy, but he was trapped by his fame and by the control of Colonel Tom Parker. The inclusion of John Smith in the book is strange. He isn't the focus. The book is about DeBarbin and her daughter, Desiree. John Smith is a side story, a piece of background information, but it's a powerful one. It suggests a pattern of behavior. It suggests that Elvis lived a secret life, parallel to his public one, a life that included hidden children. The man known as John Smith has never come forward. No one knows his real name or where he is. This anonymity makes his story both more believable and impossible to verify. If he was real, why has he never sought to prove his identity? Perhaps he was paid to stay silent. Perhaps he has no interest in the fame or the money, or perhaps he never existed at all. Perhaps he was a literary device created by DeBarbin to make her own stories seem more credible. The critics of the book point to the lack of any evidence to support DeBarbin's claims. There are no letters from Elvis, no photos of them together, no witnesses to their decades-long affair. The Elvis Presley estate has always dismissed the book as a complete fabrication. They have successfully fought off legal challenges from DeBarbin and her daughter. But the story of John Smith lingers. It represents the ultimate Elvis secret. A hidden son, living a normal life somewhere, completely unknown to the world. It's a romantic, tragic story. A story of a father who could never know his son. It feeds into the idea of Elvis as a lonely figure, trapped in a gilded cage, unable to live a normal life. If Elvis did tell Lucy DeBarban about a secret son, was he telling the truth, or was he creating a fiction of his own? Could a man so famous really keep a secret that big for his entire life? And if John Smith is a real person out there, what would it take for him to finally break his silence, and what would he have to say? Number 11. Did Elvis have a daughter with a movie star? Elvis made 31 movies. He was often cast opposite the most beautiful actresses in Hollywood. And Anne Margaret, Shelley Fabares, Nancy Sinatra. The chemistry on screen was often real. The press reported on romances, real and imagined. The most famous of these was with Anne Margaret, his co-star in Viva Las Vegas from 1964. Their connection was electric. Everyone could see it. In her 1994 autobiography, Anne Margaret, My Story, she described her relationship with Elvis as intense and loving. She called him her soulmate. She confirms they had a passionate affair. It lasted for about a year. Elvis was already committed to Priscilla Beaulieu, who was waiting for him back at Graceland. He ultimately chose to marry Priscilla. Anne Margaret writes about the heartbreak, but she never mentions a child. Still, the rumors have persisted for decades. The chemistry was so real, the love so apparent, that people find it hard to believe it just ended. A secret child is the ultimate dramatic conclusion to a Hollywood love story. The theory is that Anne Margaret became pregnant, and to avoid a massive scandal that would have destroyed both their careers, the child was given up for a quiet adoption. There has never been any evidence to support this. Anne Margaret has never claimed it. No one has ever come forward claiming to be that child. It is pure speculation fueled by the public's fascination with their on-screen and off-screen romance. But the story has power because it fits a narrative. The story of the great lost love. The life Elvis could have had. Other rumors have floated around about other co-stars. It was part of the Elvis mythology. He was so desirable that it seemed inevitable that one of these on-set romances would result in a pregnancy. But the Hollywood studio system of the 1960s was incredibly powerful, and so was Colonel Tom Parker. They were experts at fixing problems, a private doctor, a vacation for the actress, a quiet adoption. These things were not unheard of. The careers of the stars were protected at all costs. So while there is no proof, the question remains. The lack of a scandal could be seen as proof that nothing happened. Or it could be seen as proof of how effective the system was at covering things up. We are left looking at old movie clips, searching for clues in the way they looked at each other. We are left wondering if the magic on screen created a life that had to be hidden from the world. Could a secret of that magnitude have been kept by two of the most famous people in the world? If a child was born, would they even know the identity of their legendary parents? And how many other secrets from that era of Hollywood are still buried, protected by a code of silence that no longer exists? Number 10, what about the claim of Lucy DeBarban? In 1987, 10 years after Elvis died, a book appeared that caused a sensation. It was called Are You Lonesome Tonight? The untold story of Elvis Presley's one true love and the child he never knew. The author was Lucy DeBarban. She was a former model from Louisiana. Her story was explosive. She claimed she met Elvis in 1953, before he was famous. She said they began a secret love affair that lasted for 24 years, right up until his death. And she claimed that in 1962, she gave birth to his daughter, a daughter she named Desiree. According to the book, Elvis knew about Desiree. He supported them financially through secret messengers. He could never publicly acknowledge them because he was controlled by his manager, Colonel Tom Parker. Priscilla was the official girlfriend and later wife. Lucy and Desiree were the secret family, hidden in the shadows. The book was a bestseller. It was exactly what many fans wanted to hear. A story of true love, of a secret life, of a man who was more complex than his public image. It painted Elvis as a tragic figure, trapped by his fame. It painted the Colonel as a villain, controlling every aspect of his life. And it introduced the world to Desiree Presley. Desiree grew up. She pursued a music career. She bore a striking resemblance to Elvis. She and her mother appeared on television shows like The Phil Donahue Show to tell their story. They filed lawsuits against the Elvis Presley estate trying to be recognized. They wanted Desiree to be named as a legal heir. The estate fought back hard. They denied every part of the story. They produced travel records and appointment books to show that Elvis could not have been with DeBarban at the time she claimed. They said there was no proof, no letters, no photos, no credible witnesses. The lawsuits were eventually dismissed. A court-ordered DNA test was supposed to happen, but it became bogged down in legal disputes, and according to the estate, the samples provided by Desiree's side were not verifiable. The definitive scientific proof never materialized in a way that satisfied the courts. Today, the story of Lucy DeBarbin and Desiree Presley is seen by the official Elvis world as a classic example of a fabricated claim. But for many believers, the lack of proof is part of the conspiracy. They argue that the colonel and later the estate were masters at erasing history. They believe the resemblance between Desiree and Elvis is all the proof they need. Why would a woman invent such a detailed, elaborate 24-year-long story? Was it purely for the money and fame that the book brought her? If the story was a lie, how did she create a narrative so compelling that it convinced so many people? And what is it like to live your entire life as the secret daughter of a king, only to have the world and the courts tell you it was all a fantasy? Number 9. Who is Eliza Presley? This story is one of the most confusing and scientifically complex of all the claims. It doesn't start with a secret affair. It starts with a DNA test and a man who was supposed to be Elvis's father, Vernon Presley. The central figure is a woman named Alice Tiffin, who legally changed her name to Eliza Presley. She doesn't claim to be Elvis's daughter. She claims to be his half-sister, the secret daughter of Vernon Presley. Her story, as presented in court documents and online, is that she was born in 1962 and adopted. As an adult, she began searching for her birth parents. This search led her to believe that Vernon Presley, who died in 1979, was her biological father. If true, this would make her Elvis's half-sister and Lisa Marie's aunt. That alone would be a huge story. But it gets much stranger. Eliza Presley became a central figure in a theory that Elvis did not die in 1977. This theory, promoted by a small but dedicated group of people, suggests that Elvis faked his death to escape fame. And Eliza has claimed to be in contact with the secretly still living Elvis, but the core of her legal claim rests on DNA. She has worked with DNA testing companies and genealogists to try and prove her link to the Presley family. The science gets very technical. It involves getting DNA samples from known Presley relatives and comparing them. Eliza has claimed that DNA tests prove her connection to the Presley family tree. She has even claimed that DNA evidence suggests that the man buried in Elvis's grave is not him. She has been involved in lawsuits trying to get access to Elvis's DNA from items held by the estate, or even to have the body of Elvis's supposed stillborn twin brother, Jesse Garin, exhumed. The Elvis Presley estate denies her claims completely. They see her as part of the fringe world of Elvis conspiracy theories. Her story is so tangled with the Elvis is alive theory that many people dismiss it outright. But she has been persistent, she has filed legal documents, she has presented what she calls scientific evidence. She is not claiming to be Elvis's daughter, which makes her story different. She is trying to rewrite the entire Presley family history. This case shows how DNA has changed the game. It's no longer just about stories and resemblances. Claimants now come armed with lab reports and scientific jargon. But it also shows how confusing DNA evidence can be. Different experts can interpret the same data in different ways, and getting a pure, uncontaminated sample of DNA from a long-dead celebrity is almost impossible. If Vernon Presley did have a secret daughter, why was it kept hidden? Was he a man with his own secrets, separate from those of his famous son? Could DNA evidence, if it were ever definitively obtained, end all these claims once and for all, or would it just create more questions and more conspiracies? And what does it mean when a claim to be family is also a claim that the person you're related to never really died? Number 8, why did Deborah Presley go to court? Some people make their claim in a book, some do it on a talk show. Deborah Presley took her claim to the highest levels of the legal system. Her story is not just about family identity, it's about a legal battle that went on for years. Deborah, born in 1956, claimed that she was the daughter of Elvis and a woman from Nashville. She said she was adopted by a family named Gibson. She later took the name Presley and even got a California court in 1989 to legally recognize her as Elvis's daughter. This was a huge step. It was a legal document that seemed to validate her story. However, this was a default judgment, likely because no one from the Elvis Presley estate appeared to contest it at that specific hearing. It was not a judgment based on a trial or evidence. Armed with this court order, she went further. She tried to intervene in the probate case of Elvis's will in Memphis, Tennessee. This was the main event. If she could get the Memphis court to recognize her, she would be a legal heir and entitled to a share of the estate. The estate, of course, fought back. The legal battle that followed was long and messy. It involved lawyers, appeals, and a lot of money. The estate's lawyers argued that the California court order was not valid in Tennessee. They argued that there was no credible evidence that Deborah was Elvis's daughter. They pointed to the fact that her mother had signed an affidavit denying that Elvis was the father. Deborah, in turn, argued that her mother was paid off or coerced into signing that statement. Ultimately, the Tennessee court sided with the Elvis Presley estate. They refused to recognize Deborah as an heir. Her legal quest to be officially recognized as Elvis's daughter failed. After the court battles, she stayed involved in the Elvis world, sometimes appearing at fan events. She maintained her claim, but the legal system had shut the door. Her case is important because it shows how difficult the legal path is for any claimant. The estate is a powerful corporation with immense resources. They have a vested interest in keeping the number of heirs at exactly one Lisa Marie. Any new heir would dilute the value of Lisa Marie's inheritance and complicate the business of managing the Elvis brand. What did that California court see in 1989 that led them to issue that initial judgment? If her mother did sign a statement denying the affair, why would she do that if the claim were true? Was it pressure, money, or simply the truth? And does a legal defeat mean a claim is false, or does it just mean it couldn't be proven in a court of law? Number 7, the story of Desiree Presley. Desiree Presley is not a name you can easily forget. For a time in the late 1980s and 1990s, she was arguably the most famous of all the alleged secret children. Her story was told in her mother's best-selling book. She appeared on national television. And for many people, the physical resemblance to Elvis was uncanny. Born in 1962, Desiree was presented to the world as the living, breathing proof of the secret love affair between her mother, Lucy DeBarbin, and Elvis Presley. The story was that she grew up knowing Elvis was her father, but it was a secret she had to keep. She would receive gifts from him, delivered by intermediaries. She lived a life on the periphery of his fame. When the book Are You Lonesome Tonight came out in 1987, Desiree was 25 years old. She stepped into the spotlight with her mother. She was poised and well-spoken. She talked about the pain of not being able to know her father publicly. She embarked on a singing career, inevitably drawing comparisons to Elvis. The resemblance was her greatest asset and her biggest burden. She had the dark hair, the facial structure, and a certain look in her eyes that reminded people of him. The legal battles she and her mother fought against the estate were intense. They were trying to get Desiree legally recognized as an heir. The estate's lawyers went on the attack. They called her and her mother liars and extortionists. The case hinged on proving the 24-year affair. Without that, the claim about Desiree had no foundation. As the estate's lawyers picked apart Lucy DeBarbin's timeline, showing Elvis was elsewhere during key moments she described, the case weakened. The issue of a DNA test was a major point of contention. The estate demanded one. DeBarbin and Desiree initially agreed, but then backed out, claiming they didn't trust the lab or the process. They feared the results would be tampered with. To the public, this looked like they were afraid of the truth. To their supporters, it was proof that they feared the power of the estate to manipulate the evidence. Without a DNA test that both sides agreed on, the claim remained in limbo, impossible to definitively prove, and impossible to definitively disprove to the believers. Desiree's story is a powerful example of how a claim can take on a life of its own. It became a media sensation. It was a soap opera played out in public. It had love, secrets, a tragic hero, and a mysterious child. But once the media glare faded and the courts ruled against them, Desiree's public profile diminished. Can a physical resemblance ever be considered real evidence, or is it just a trick of the mind where we see what we want to see? What is the psychological toll on a person who is raised to believe they are the child of a global icon, only to have that identity challenged and denied at every turn? And if she wasn't Elvis's daughter, where did the powerful resemblance that so many people saw come from? Number 6, could Vernon Presley's DNA solve the mystery? In all these stories, there is a ghost. It's not Elvis, it's science. The promise of DNA testing hangs over every claim. In theory, it should be simple. Compare the claimant's DNA to the DNA of Elvis or a close relative. Get a match, and the case is solved. No match, and the claim is false. But it is never that simple. First, getting a sample of Elvis's DNA is extremely difficult. The Elvis Presley estate guards his legacy, and his physical remains fiercely. They do not hand out DNA samples. Items he owned, like his clothes or hair, are collector's items worth a fortune. and they could be contaminated. Anyone who has handled them could have left their own DNA behind. This makes any test on these items unreliable. This has led to a focus on Elvis's father, Vernon Presley. He is a confirmed direct relative. If you are Elvis's child, you are Vernon's grandchild. His DNA would provide a clear link. Some claimants, like Eliza Presley, have focused their efforts on proving a link to Vernon. This led to a bizarre legal battle. A man who owned a razor that supposedly belonged to Vernon Presley sold it on eBay. A group of claimants reportedly pooled their money to buy it, hoping to extract Vernon's DNA from it. This is the world these claimants live in, a world of buying old razors and trying to get a court order to exhume a body. The estate, naturally, opposes any attempt to disturb the graves at Graceland. They see it as a desecration, a publicity stunt. The claimants see it as the only way to get to the truth, a truth they believe the estate is afraid of. Even when DNA tests are done, the results are often disputed. Lisa Johansson, another major claimant, had a DNA test done as part of a lawsuit. The results came back negative. She claimed the sample was switched or contaminated. This is a common pattern. When the science doesn't support the story, the science itself is attacked. It becomes part of the conspiracy. The science of DNA has become more advanced since the first claims were made. Today, it's possible to build a family tree from tiny amounts of genetic material and by comparing it to databases of relatives. But the fundamental problem remains: you need a clean, verified sample from the source. Without that, you are just comparing shadows. If the estate truly believes all the claims are false, why not agree to a definitive, publicly monitored DNA test to end the speculation once and for all? Is their refusal based on protecting Elvis's privacy, or are they afraid of what might be found? And in a world where science can be both a tool of truth and a source of conspiracy, could any DNA result ever be accepted by everyone as the final word? Number 5. What really happened to Lisa Johansson? Of all the people who have claimed to be a secret child of Elvis, Lisa Johansson's story is the most detailed, the most dramatic, and the most legally aggressive. For a time, her claims seemed to shake the very foundations of the official story. She came forward in 1998 with a book, Lisa Marie, The True Story of Elvis Presley's Real Daughter. In it, she did not claim to be a secret child. She claimed to be the child. She claimed she was the real Lisa Marie Presley. Her story was that in 1977, after Elvis's death, Priscilla decided that life in the spotlight would be too dangerous for her 9-year-old daughter. So, according to Johansson, she was secretly sent to Sweden to be raised by an adoptive family. The woman the world knows as Lisa Marie, she claimed, was an imposter, a stand-in. It was a staggering claim. It didn't just add a child to the story, it tried to erase the known one. The book was filled with intimate details of life at Graceland. She described rooms, conversations, and private moments with an air of authority. She explained that she was now coming forward to reclaim her identity and her birthright. She took her fight to the courts. In 2011, she filed a $130 million lawsuit against the Elvis Presley estate. She accused them of defamation and emotional distress. The lawsuit forced a confrontation. The estate's lawyers called her claims delusional and a fabrication. The centerpiece of the legal battle became a DNA test. Johansson, the Presley family, and their lawyers all agreed to a test in London. The results were announced. It was not a match. The DNA test proved that Lisa Johansson was not the daughter of Elvis Presley. For the estate, this was the end of the story. Case closed. But for Johansson, it was not. She immediately claimed the test was rigged. She claimed the DNA samples were swapped. The conspiracy she had described in her book was now playing out in real life, she argued. Her lawsuit was eventually dismissed. The judge cited the DNA evidence. Her legal battle was over. The aftermath was tragic. Johansson's life seemed to unravel. Her husband and children who had supported her were caught in the middle. The family faced legal troubles in the United States, and there were reports of custody battles over their children. The dream of reclaiming her identity as Lisa Marie Presley had turned into a nightmare. Her story is a cautionary tale. It shows how a powerful belief can consume a person's life. The details in her book were compelling to many. Where did they come from? Was she a gifted storyteller? Did she research Elvis's life so obsessively that she began to believe she had lived it? Or was she, as the estate claimed, simply a fraud? What makes a person believe so strongly in a story that they are willing to risk everything for it, their family, their reputation, their finances? If she fabricated the entire story, how did she create such a detailed and convincing narrative of life inside Graceland? And What happens to a person's mind when the identity they have fought for is scientifically and legally stripped away from them? Number 4, did Priscilla know everything? Priscilla Presley is the central figure in the official history of Elvis's family. She was his wife. She is the mother of his only confirmed child, Lisa Marie. She was the one who, after his death, helped turn Graceland into a global tourist attraction and built Elvis Presley Enterprises into a financial empire. She is the guardian of the flame. In any story about a secret child, she is either a victim or a co-conspirator. Either Elvis had a secret life that he successfully hid from her, or she knew about it and helped him keep the secret. The claimants often portray her in one of these two ways. In Lucy de Barbin's book, Priscilla is the official wife who never knew about Elvis's one true love. In Lisa Johansson's story, Priscilla is the mastermind behind the plan to switch her daughter with a decoy. Priscilla has consistently and forcefully denied all of it. For decades, her position has never wavered. Elvis had one child. That child is Lisa Marie. Everyone else is lying. In interviews and in her own book, Elvis and Me, she paints a picture of a marriage that was intense and complicated, but not one that involved secret families. She describes Elvis as the love of her life, but also as a man who is often unfaithful. She acknowledges his affairs, for example, with Anne Margaret, but she has never given an inch on the possibility of a child resulting from one of those affairs. To believe any of the claimants, you have to believe that Priscilla is either mistaken or not telling the truth. The believers see her as the head of a corporation protecting a brand. Acknowledging another child would be a financial and public relations disaster. It would tarnish the carefully crafted image of the Elvis legacy. It would complicate the inheritance. From this point of view, she has a billion-dollar incentive to deny everything, regardless of the truth. But what if we take her at her word? What if she is simply telling the truth as she knows it? Perhaps Elvis was skilled at keeping secrets. His life was compartmentalized. He had his Memphis Mafia, his Hollywood life, his life on the road. It's possible he could have maintained a relationship and even a child without her knowledge. Or perhaps the claims are just what she says they are, fantasies created by strangers. The pressure on her has been immense. She has spent more than half her life as the keeper of Elvis's legacy. She has had to face these accusations again and again. She has had to see women on television claiming to be her husband's true love, and children who look a little like her daughter claiming to be the real heir. Is it possible for a wife, even in a marriage as unusual as theirs, to be completely unaware of a secret child? If she did know, what would have been her motivation to keep such a secret after Elvis's death? Was her role as the protector of the estate a role she chose, or one that was forced upon her by the circumstances of his chaotic life and death? Number 3, why does the Elvis estate deny everyone? Elvis Presley Enterprises, or EPE, is not a family scrapbook. It's a major corporation. It manages Graceland, the music rights, the image, the merchandise. It is a business, and its primary product is the story of Elvis Presley. That story is very specific. A poor boy becomes a king. He lives in a mansion with his beloved family, and he leaves behind one daughter, Lisa Marie, to carry on his legacy. It's a clean, simple, powerful narrative, and the corporation has a legal and financial duty to protect it. Every person who comes forward claiming to be a secret child is a direct threat to that narrative. They are a threat to the brand. From a purely business perspective, acknowledging another child would be a catastrophe. First, there is the money. The state is worth hundreds of millions, perhaps billions of dollars. A legally recognized heir would be entitled to a significant portion of that. This would mean a massive financial loss for the current beneficiaries. It would also lead to shareholder lawsuits and chaos in the company's structure. Second, there is the issue of control. The story of Elvis is carefully managed. EPE decides which movies are made, which books are authorized, which songs are re-released. A new heir with a new story and a new perspective could challenge that control. They could have legal standing to object to business decisions. They could write their own book, tell their own story, and create a competing version of the Elvis legend that the corporation could not control. So the estate's response is always the same: deny, deny, deny. They have a team of high-powered lawyers. They have a public relations machine. They have a simple and consistent message. These people are liars, and there is no evidence. They will not engage with the claims on a personal level. They treat it as a business problem, a legal threat to be neutralized. This is why they fight so hard in court. It's why they oppose exhumations and refuse to provide DNA samples. Any concession, any hint that a claim might have merit would open the floodgates. If they acknowledge one, they might have to acknowledge others. It's easier and safer to have a zero-tolerance policy. But is it only about business, or is it also about protecting a family's privacy and a man's memory? The people running the estate, including Priscilla and until her death, Lisa Marie, were his family. They may genuinely believe these claims are false and view them as a painful and disrespectful exploitation of the man they loved. The constant stream of claimants must be emotionally exhausting. Could the estate's fierce denials be a sign that they are hiding something, as the claimants believe? Or is it simply the most logical and effective strategy for a billion-dollar corporation to protect its most valuable asset? And has the business of Elvis become so big that the truth, whatever it may be, is no longer relevant? Number two, is it about money or identity? Why does someone come forward and claim to be the secret child of Elvis Presley? The immediate, cynical answer is always money. And it's true, a share of the Elvis estate would make anyone instantly wealthy. For some, this is almost certainly the primary motivation. They see a lottery ticket, they are willing to gamble on a story in the hope of a massive payout, but if you listen to the claimants themselves, they often say it's not about the money. They say it's about identity, it's about knowing who you are and where you come from. Imagine growing up feeling different, disconnected from your family. Imagine seeing a picture of Elvis and feeling an inexplicable connection. Imagine your mother telling you, on her deathbed, that the king of rock and roll was your father. This story, if you believe it, changes everything. It explains everything about your life. It gives you a sense of purpose, of destiny. You are not just an ordinary person anymore. You are royalty. This is a powerful psychological pull. It can be more seductive than money. For some, the fight is for recognition. They want the world and the Presley family to acknowledge them. They want their birth certificate to tell what they believe is the truth. There is also the world of the fans. The Elvis fan community is vast and passionate. For a claimant, gaining the support of a group of these fans can be like finding a new family. They find people who believe their story, who see the resemblance, who support their fight against the powerful estate. This validation can be a powerful force, reinforcing their belief and encouraging them to continue their fight, even when the evidence is against them. Then there is the possibility of simple delusion. The human mind is a strange thing. People can convince themselves of things that are not true, especially when it involves a figure as mythic as Elvis. They can misinterpret memories, see patterns that aren't there, and build an entire identity around a fantasy. This doesn't necessarily make them bad people, it makes them human. So we are left with a spectrum of motivations. At one end is calculated fraud for financial gain. At the other is a genuine, but perhaps mistaken, belief that is rooted in a deep psychological need for identity. And in the middle, there are shades of gray. People who may have started with a suspicion and have since convinced themselves it is the truth. People whose motivations are a complex mix of money, fame, identity, and a desire to be part of the greatest story in rock and roll history. If you took away all the money, would the claim stop? How many people would still fight for decades just to have the name Presley on a legal document? And is the search for a connection to Elvis a search for a father, or is it a search for a piece of a cultural myth that we all, in some way, feel we are a part of? Number one, what does Lisa Marie's legacy mean for these claims? For 54 years, Lisa Marie Presley was the living legacy of Elvis. She was the one and only child. Her existence was the undisputed fact at the center of all the speculation. Every claimant had to define themselves in relation to her. Some, like Lisa Johansson, claimed to be her. Others claimed to be the secret sibling she never knew she had. She was the constant, the control variable in the experiment. Her life was lived under an impossible shadow. She was the daughter of a king. She tried to forge her own identity, as a musician and as a mother, but she could never escape being Elvis Presley's daughter. She was a constant physical reminder of him. She had his eyes, his smile. She was the keeper of his memory in a way that was different from her mother. It was in her blood. She rarely spoke publicly about the many people who claimed to be her father's secret children. When she did, she was dismissive. She saw them as part of the circus that had surrounded her family her entire life. For her, they were not a genuine mystery to be solved. They were a nuisance and insult to her and her father's memory. Her existence was the proof that they were wrong. Now, she is gone. Lisa Marie Presley died on January 12th, 2023. Her death was a shock. It was the end of an era. The most direct living link to Elvis was broken, and it leaves a strange and uncertain void. What happens to the claims now? On one hand, her death could be the final nail in the coffin for these stories. The one person who was the focus of so much of their narrative is no longer here. The estate now passes to her children, Elvis's grandchildren. The line of succession is clear. The story feels more settled, more a part of history. But on the other hand, her passing could open a new chapter. With both Elvis and Lisa Marie gone, the story is no longer about living people, but about history and inheritance. Will this encourage new claimants to come forward? Will the management of the estate change, becoming more or less open to investigating the past? DNA from Lisa Marie might now be involved in future legal claims, creating new scientific avenues to explore. Her death makes the story of Elvis's lineage feel both more complete and more fragile. For over 40 years, the world could look at Lisa Marie and see Elvis. Now that is gone. We are left with photographs, films, and the music. The myth is now fully in the past, and myths have a way of growing and changing once the real people are gone. The stories of secret children are part of that myth. They are the unofficial, unproven, and an unforgettable chapter in the story of a man who was, to many, more than just a man. He was a king, and a kingdom is never short of people who claim to be a part of the royal bloodline. With Lisa Marie gone, who is left to be the ultimate authority on Elvis's family? Does her death make the claims of others seem more or less plausible? And will the search for a secret child of Elvis ever truly end, or is it now a permanent part of the legend, destined to be told as long as his music is played?